What's up, guys, and welcome to today's video. I hope we're all well. Today we are going to discuss the topic of fasting. And no, we're not going to go into discussing the pros and cons of fasting and the health benefits that comes with it. No, we are going to discuss how we should approach our training, programming, and exercise if you are the type of person that is going to be going extended periods of time without eating any food. So this one is particularly going to be useful for those who are doing Ramadan, or if you're just the type of person who likes to fast throughout the day.
Now, before we get stuck in, I want to very briefly touch upon process of protein synthesis, because this has quite a lot to do with the topic that we are discussing today. For those who don't know, protein synthesis is the metabolic process that produces muscle protein, facilitating the maintenance or building of muscle mass. So ideally, you want, throughout the day, protein synthesis to be occurring as much as possible if your goal is to build as much muscle tissue as possible. If size is the goal, what is going to have an effect on protein synthesis? Well, first of all, protein quality. Okay, this has an impact on the magnitude of the protein synthesis response, and particularly what's important is the amino acid chain profile. Okay, so in all the foods you eat, if you're eating proteins, it will have an amino acid chain profile. What you really want to go for is a complete amino acid chain profile, which has all 9 of the essential amino acids that we cannot produce, in particular the ones that have the biggest effect on building muscle tissue: L-leucine, L-lysine, L-methionine. Total protein intake is also going to have an impact on this, so how much protein you're consuming throughout the day. So say, for example, someone who's looking to be maximizing size, hypertrophy, a good steady target to aim for would be 2 grams to 2.2 grams per total kilogram of body weight. So me, for example, I'm around 95 kilograms. I try to eat between 200 grams and 210 grams of protein every day. Meal timing. So this is how many meals per day you're going to be consuming. Now, roughly speaking, protein synthesis lasts for 5 hours after you've consumed a meal. Of course, this will vary depending upon the size of the meal and how much protein was in that meal and the protein quality in that meal, but roughly, let's just say it's going to be 5 hours. So after this, protein synthesis stops occurring. So why is this important? Well, because when you are fasting, the majority of the time that you will be fasting after that 5 hours post meal consumption, protein synthesis isn't really going to be occurring a whole lot. So that means if your goal is to build muscle tissue, it's not going to be ideal at all.
So how would my training change if I am following this approach of fasting throughout the day? Well, I guess it does depend a little bit on when exactly it is that I'm going to train. So if I were to break the fast in the evening at the end of the day and train afterwards, I don't really think I would change a whole lot, because I'm hydrated, I've got some food in my system, so there's no reason why I can't train how I would usually train. If I were to train during the day, I get a lot of people asking me, okay, I like to wake up first thing, train fasted, or I'm doing Ramadan and I want to train during the day or just before the fast ends. This is going to be a little bit different. First of all, you don't really have any food in your system which you're going to be using as fuel. You're going to be using existing stored energy in your body, glycogen, muscle tissue, fat stores. So I would argue that the quality of the session, the performance of the session, and how heavy you can lift is going to be impacted. So I would not try and do any personal bests. I would not try and follow a strength-focused training program. I might not even try and follow a high volume training program, because it makes no sense to do a lot of volume and a lot of excessive heavy lifting if you can't be fueled during the session, if in particular you're not going to be hydrated during the session, and if you've got no food in your system. So I would probably reduce the volume, but just focus on maybe slower reps, high quality reps, and just trying to still lift heavy, but not pushing to failure.
So we have a little bit of smaller board where I am trying to portray what 2 different types of fasts would look like. We have the 16-hour fast. So this is typically somebody who would be breaking their fast at 6 o'clock and having the last meal at 9 o'clock. I'm probably not going to be eating anything after 9 o'clock, so I'll be going to bed. I don't want to eat too close to bedtime. Ideally, you don't really want to be eating anything close to you actually being horizontal. So an ideal sweet spot would be consuming your last meal 3 hours before actually going to sleep, so you've digested the bulk of it. Now, as we mentioned before, protein synthesis still continues to occur after consuming that meal. So after 9 o'clock, still breaking down the meal for about 5 hours, and then being in that fasted state starts at around 2 a.m. So from 2 a.m. all the way up to 6 p.m. you're in a fasted state. And then what you would realistically be trying to do would be to consume the majority or all of your calories within a 3-hour feeding window, which is, I don't know about you, not ideal, a little bit tricky. It is possible. I mean, if I was to be consuming 3,000 calories a day, I could do it. I would have to break it down, maybe having a 1,000 to 1,500 calorie meal at 6 o'clock, and then again 1,000 to 1,500 calorie meal at 9 o'clock. But of course, protein synthesis, as you can see, it's not really going to be occurring a whole lot throughout that time which you're eating, only, you know, from 6 o'clock up until 2 a.m. Is that approach going to be best for bulking, building muscle tissue, being the biggest that you can possibly be? No, but it could be superior or beneficial if you are trying to get the health benefits from fasting, or you're trying to maximize weight loss or fat loss. The 8-hour fast. Now this is a little bit more complicated because this is the Ramadan situation. Now I know that here in Dubai right now the sun sets at 6:30, so that's when I break the fast. I would probably be having my last meal of the day 5:30 a.m. So this would be roughly an hour before the sunrise. Obviously I'll be digesting that for roughly about 5 hours, and then I start the fasted state period at 10:30 a.m. Now from here all the way up until when I break my fast, that's only 8 hours. So I'm fasting for 8 hours in comparison to the 16-hour fast. I think for sure the most difficult thing throughout this period is not drinking water. Okay, that would suck. I've done it before, not drinking water all day, and that is not an ideal situation to be in, and I'm sure that may actually have an impact on protein synthesis. The feeding window here is 11 hours in comparison to the 3-hour feeding window here. So consuming all the calories that you need to consume during Ramadan is entirely possible, okay? I could easily do that within an 11-hour feeding window. The only problem, and the biggest problem here, is, I think without a doubt, sleep. So if I was doing Ramadan and I was based in Dubai, I would have that last meal, 5:30, I would pray, do whatever I need to do, and then around an hour or so after that, I would go to sleep. And I would try to sleep for as much as possible, and then wake up, and I'd only really be having a few hours throughout the day, but I'm not drinking water, I'm not eating anything. And then I'd break the fast at 6:30, and I would probably train somewhere here, a couple hours after breaking the fast, and then I'd be consuming all my meals throughout the night. Now I know not everybody would be able to do that because they have a life, they have kids, family, a job to go to throughout the day. But I'm one of the more fortunate ones where I can literally dictate exactly what it is that I do with my schedule throughout the day. So I would just do exactly what I'm doing now, but I'd reverse my sleeping pattern and daylight hours. So throughout the night, I would be active. Throughout the day, I'd be asleep.
For those people who are doing Ramadan and they want to train during the day, I would ask yourself why. Dehydrated, not able to drink any water, and not having any food in your system, it's not going to put you in the best situation for you to do a decent weight session. I've done it before, I tried it before. Two of my friends in the UK who were doing Ramadan, I decided to train with them, didn't drink any water, didn't have any food, and it was fucking difficult.
So when it comes to your overall goals during this period of time, I think it's safe to say that bulking or going through a phase of trying to build muscle tissue is probably not going to be the most effective. It could be done, particularly if you're a beginner, maybe you're starting out with training for the very first time. But for most advanced lifters, it's going to be a little bit difficult purely because of the extended periods of time where protein synthesis is not going to be occurring. That being said, there still should be a big emphasis on resistance training. You want to still be doing something which is going to preserve as much strength and muscle tissue as possible. So resistance training should always be a priority in your training programming. As I mentioned before, the best time to train would be after you have broken the fast and you've got some nutrients in your system, protein synthesis has kickstarted again, and particularly for those people who are doing Ramadan, you are hydrated, you've got some fluids into your system. So the quality of the workout is going to be better. One thing that you've got to be aware of is just not consuming too much that first meal when you break the fast, because if you're eating a meal which is very dense or very high in volume, or it's just simply a lot of calories, your body's going to be using a lot of its resources to break down that meal. And I know for sure when I've gone through a long period of time without eating, then I have a massive meal, the last thing I want to do is go to the gym. Like, I'm absolutely wiped out, and it takes me a couple of hours to actually recover and digest it before, I have any chance of doing a decent workout in the gym. So for me personally, I would break the fast with a high protein meal, but I would keep it light. So I'd probably stick to fish, eggs, maybe some fruit, dried fruit, dates, things like that. So I'm getting protein in, I'm getting some fast acting carbohydrates in, but it's not going to make me feel really heavy and sluggish. And for those people who are on my Thirst app and they are fasting or they are doing Ramadan at this period of time, I don't have a specific Ramadan training program. You could still do a lot of these programs. As I've said, you just have to maybe reduce the overall volume, whereby you may be doing one less training session per week, or just making sure that you're not pushing too close to failure consistently, because it's going to be difficult to try and maintain this amount of volume if you are in a calorie deprived state. There's a sale on right now where you can get 30% off, so make sure you head over to thirstapp.com. I'll see you guys on the inside.